Rain lashed against the penthouse windows, each drop a reminder of the storm brewing in my heart. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the bow tie that felt like a noose. My reflection a stranger in a tailored tuxedo. At 25, I, Elias Carter, was about to marry a man I barely knew to save my family's crumbling legacy. The Carter name had once meant something in New York: old money, art galleries, charity galas. But Dad's bad investments and Mom's illness had bled us dry. Enter Victor Langston, a billionaire real estate mogul with a smile as cold as the steel in his skyscrapers. He offered to bail us out, but the price was steep: my hand in marriage. A business deal, he called it. A merger of convenience. I'd said yes. Not for love, but for duty. My sister, Lila, needed her treatments, and my parents needed their dignity. I could sacrifice my heart for that, couldn't I? The wedding was set for tonight at the Langston Hotel, a glittering fortress in Manhattan. I'd met Victor only thrice, each time a study in calculated charm. He was 40, polished, and distant, his gray eyes scanning me like I was a contract to be signed. "You'll want for nothing," he'd said, but his words echoed hollow. I didn't want his wealth. I wanted a life that felt like mine. As I slipped on my cufflinks, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Don't do this, Elias. You deserve better." My pulse quickened. Only one person could send a message like that: Jude Navarro. My rival. My shadow. The one person who'd always seen through me. Jude and I had history, tangled and raw. We'd met in college. Two art majors with dreams bigger than our bank accounts. I was the golden boy from a fading dynasty. He was the scholarship kid from Brooklyn with a chip on his shoulder and a paintbrush in his hand. We'd competed for everything: professors' praise, gallery spots, each other's attention. Our rivalry was electric, laced with something neither of us dared name. By senior year, we'd almost crossed that linear late-night studio session, his hand brushing mine, our breaths too close. But I'd pulled back, scared of what it meant. Then graduation came, and we went our separate ways. Until now. I deleted the text, my fingers trembling. Jude had no right to haunt me. Not today. But as I rode the elevator down to the ballroom, his words clung to me like damp clothes. The Langston Hotel glittered with excess crystal chandeliers, white roses, a string quartet playing Vivaldi. Guests in black tie milled about, their smiles as practiced as Victor's. My parents stood by the bar, Mom's frail frame leaning on Dad, both looking at me with desperate gratitude. I forced a smile, my chest tight. Victor approached, his suit impeccable, his expression unreadable. "You look suitable," he said, as if I were a piece of furniture. I nodded, words caught in my throat. The officiant called us to the altar, and the room hushed. I felt the weight of every eye, every expectation. This was the moment I'd trade my future for my family's past. The ceremony began, the officiant's voice a dull hum. I repeated the vows, each word a stone sinking in my gut. Victor's hand was cold in mine, his grip firm, like he was sealing a deal. I glanced at the crowd, searching for an anchor. Lila, Mom, anyone. Then the doors at the back of the ballroom burst open. Jude stood there, rain-soaked and wild-eyed, his leather jacket dripping onto the marble floor. Gasps rippled through the room. My heart stopped. He strode forward, his boots echoing like gunshots. His gaze locked on me. "Elias," he said, voice raw. "You can't do this." Victor's hand tightened on mine, his jaw a sharp line. "Who is this?" he demanded, but I couldn't speak. Jude's presence was a spark in a powder keg, igniting memories I'd buried, nights arguing over art. His laugh, the way he'd looked at me like I was more than a Carter, more than a pawn. "Elias, you don't love him," Jude said, stepping closer. The crowd murmured, scandalized. "You're throwing your life away for a lie." His eyes burned into mine, daring me to deny it. I wanted to scream, to run, to pull him close and push him away all at once. But I stood frozen, caught between duty and desire, as the room held its breath. Victor's voice cut through the tension, icy and controlled. "Security, remove this man." 2 guards moved toward Jude, but he didn't flinch. He was here for me, and that truth was a blade twisting in my chest. What had I done? Agreeing to this marriage. And what would I do now, with Jude standing there, tearing my carefully built walls apart? The guard seized Jude's arms, but he shook them off, his eyes never leaving mine. "Elias, tell me I'm wrong," he said, his voice cracking like a fault line. The room spun, the chandeliers blurring into streaks of light. And for a moment, it was just us, me and Jude, like it used to be. I opened my mouth, but no words came. Victor stepped forward, his presence looming like a skyscraper. "This is a private event," he said, his tone clipped, each syllable a warning. "You're trespassing." The guests whispered, their curiosity a living thing, feeding on the drama. My mother clutched Dad's arm, her face pale, while Lila stared at Jude like he was a character from one of her novels. Jude ignored Victor, his focus a laser on me. "You're not a contract, Elias. You're not some asset to be traded." His words hit like punches, each one unraveling the logic I'd used to justify this marriage. I told myself it was noble, sacrificing for family, but Jude's voice made it feel like betrayal off myself. "Enough," Victor snapped, signaling the guards again. They grabbed Jude, more forcefully this time, dragging him toward the doors. My heart lurched. "Wait," I shouted, the word bursting out before I could stop it. The room fell silent, every eye on me. Victor's gaze was a blade, sharp and cold. "Elias," he said, low and dangerous, "don't embarrass us." But I was already moving, pulling my hand from his grip, my polished shoes slipping on the marble as I ran toward Jude. The guards paused, uncertain, as I reached him. Up close, he smelled of rain and paint. The same Jude who'd once sketched my face in charcoal, his fingers smudged and gentle. "Why are you here?" I whispered, my voice shaking. "Because I couldn't let you do this," he said, his breath warm against my cheek. "I've regretted every day since we walked away from each other. I love you, Elias. I always have." The confession was a grenade, blasting through years of denial. My knees buckled, but I caught myself. The guests were a blur, their murmurs a distant roar. Victor's voice cut through, precise and venomous. "This is absurd. Elias, return to the altar." Now. I turned, caught between two worlds. Victor represented safety, stability, the promise I'd made to my family. Jude was chaos, risk, the life I'd dreamed of but never dared to claim. My mother's eyes pleaded with me, her frail hands trembling. Lila stepped forward, her voice soft but firm. Elias, listen to your heart. For once. Her words were a lifeline. I looked at Jude, his face raw with hope and fear. And something inside me snapped. I can't, I said to Victor, my voice steady despite the storm inside. I can't marry you. The room erupted gasps, whispers, a glass shattering somewhere. Victor's face was a mask of fury, but he didn't move. You'll regret this, he said, his voice low, like a promise of retribution. I didn't care. I grabbed Jude's hand, his fingers warm and calloused, and we ran. We burst into the rain-soaked street, the city a maze of lights and noise. Jude pulled me into an alley, his laughter wild and free, like it used to be in college. You're insane, I said, breathless. But I was smiling, my heart pounding with something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. Don't act like you didn't want this, he teased, his eyes glinting under the streetlights. But his smile faded as he touched my face, his thumb brushing my cheek. What now, Elias? I didn't have an answer. My family's future was crumbling. Victor's wrath was a ticking bomb, and I'd just thrown away everything for a man who'd once broken my heart. But standing there, rain soaking through my tuxedo, I felt alive. We figure it out, I said, gripping his hand tighter. Together. We ducked into a diner, the kind with sticky tables and neon signs, to escape the rain. Over coffee that tasted like tar. Jude told me he'd been following my engagement in the tabloids, each headline a knife in his chest. I tried to move on, he said, stirring his coffee, his eyes distant. But every time I painted, it was you. Your eyes, your hands, your stupid, perfect smile. I laughed, but it was shaky, my emotions a tangled mess. You could have called, you know, before I got engaged. And said what? Hey, Elias, ditch your billionaire fiancé for the broke artist who's still in love with you. He leaned back, his leather jacket creaking. I didn't think you'd listen. Not until I saw you at that altar, looking like you were drowning. I wanted to argue, but he was right. I'd been drowning, and he'd been the one to pull me out. But now what? My phone buzzed. Lila. Texting, Mom and Dad are freaking out. Victor's livid. Where are you? I stared at the screen, guilt clawing at me. I'd saved myself. But at what cost? The diner's fluorescent lights buzzed, casting shadows on Jude's face as he watched me read Lila's text. Your family? He asked, his voice soft but wary. I nodded, the weight of my choice settling like a stone in my chest. Running out on Victor wasn't just a rebellion, it was a wrecking ball through my family's fragile stability. Lila says Victor's furious, I said, setting the phone down. And my parents, God, they're probably humiliated. I could picture Mom's face, her frail hope shattered, and Dad's quiet disappointment. Worse than any lecture. Jude reached across the table, his hand covering mine. You did the right thing. Elias. You can't live a lie for them. But I can't let them lose everything either. I snapped, pulling my hand away. The diner's warmth felt suffocating now, the smell of burnt coffee turning my stomach. Jude's eyes darkened, but he didn't push back. He never did when I got like this sharp. Defensive. The Carter pride rearing its head. Let's go somewhere we can talk, he said, tossing a few bills on the table. We stepped back into the rain, the city alive with honking cabs and flickering neon. Jude led me to his studio, a cramped loft in Brooklyn where we'd spent countless college nights painting and arguing. The smell of turpentine hit me like a memory, and I saw his latest work canvases bursting with color. All abstract, but unmistakably emotional, like pieces of his soul. You kept painting, I said, tracing a swirl of blue that reminded me of the Hudson River. He shrugged, leaning against a cluttered workbench. It's the only thing that makes sense. Well, that and you. His voice was quiet, but it carried a weight that made my chest ache. I wanted to stay in that moment, suspended in the warmth of his words. But reality clawed its way back. Jude, I don't know how to fix this. Victor's not just some guiller's got power. Connections. He could ruin my family. I paced, my wet shoes squeaking on the hardwood. And Lila's treatments. They're expensive. I can't just. Stop, Jude said, stepping in front of me. His hands gripped my shoulders, grounding me. You're not alone in this. We'll figure it out. But you need to decide what you want. Elias. Not what your family wants. Not what Victor wants you. His words were a mirror, forcing me to face the truth I'd avoided for years. I'd spent my life trying to be the perfect son, the perfect heir, but I'd never asked myself what I wanted. Not until Jude, with his reckless courage and infuriating honesty, had forced me to see it. My phone buzzed again. Victor, this time. You've made a grave mistake. Elias. We need to discuss terms. The cold precision of his words sent a chill down my spine. I showed Jude the text, and his jaw tightened. He's not letting you go that easily, he said. Guys like him don't lose. Then what do we do? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Jude didn't answer right away. Instead, he pulled me into his arms, his warmth cutting through the damp chill of my clothes. For the first time that night, I let myself lean into him, my forehead resting against his shoulder. We fight, he said finally, his voice fierce. For you. For us. For whatever this is. He pulled back, his eyes searching mine. But you have to want it too. I did. God. I did. But wanting something didn't make it possible. We spent the night in his loft, talking until dawn, piecing together the mess I'd made. Jude told me about his life since college scraping by, showing his art in small galleries, never quite breaking through. I told him about the pressure of being a Carter, the weight of expectations I'd carried since I was a kid. By morning, we were exhausted but closer, our past rivalry melting into something deeper, something real. But reality wouldn't wait. Lila called as the sun rose. Her voice panicked. Elias, Victor's lawyers are at the house. They're talking about suing us for breach of contract. Mom's crying. And Dad's, I don't know what to do. My stomach dropped. Victor wasn't just angry, was weaponizing his wealth. and my family was in the crosshairs. We need a plan, I said to Jude, my voice steadier than I felt. He nodded, already grabbing his jacket. Then let's go? Your family's my family now. His words caught me off guard. A flicker of hope in the chaos. But as we headed to my parents' house, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were walking into a storm far bigger than the one we'd left behind. The cab ride to my parents' brownstone felt like a descent into a battlefield. Jude sat beside me, his knee bouncing, his usual bravado replaced by a quiet intensity. I clutched my phone, rereading Lila's texts, each one a plea for me to fix what I'd broken. The city blurred past taxis, bodegas, people living lives untouched by the mess I'd made. I envied them. We arrived to find a black SUV parked outside, its tinted windows screaming Victor's influence. Inside, the house was a war zone of emotions. Mom sat on the couch, her eyes red, a tissue crumpled in her hand. Dad stood by the window, his shoulders slumped, while Lila paced, her phone glued to her ear. Two men in suits Victor's lawyers sat at the dining table, their briefcases open, papers spread like a declaration of war. Elias, Mom said, her voice breaking as she stood to hug me. Her frail arms felt like they might snap under the weight of her worry. What have you done? Dad didn't look at me, his silence louder than any reprimand. Jude stepped forward, his presence a shield. This isn't just on Elias, he said, his voice firm. He made a choice for himself, not against you. The lawyers exchanged glances, one jotting notes, the other checking his watch. The older one, with a face like carved granite, spoke. Mr. Carter, you signed a binding agreement with Mr. Langston. Breaching it has consequences: financial, legal, and reputational. I swallowed, my throat dry. What does he want? I asked, though I already knew. Victor didn't lose gracefully. The lawyer slid a document across the table, its pages thick with legalese. Mr. Langston is prepared to forgive the breach if you honor the original agreement. Return to him, and your family's debts are cleared. Refuse, and we'll pursue damages that will bankrupt you. Lila gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Mom sank back onto the couch, her face ashen. Dad finally turned, his eyes meeting mine, filled with a mix of anger and despair. Elias, we trusted you, he said, his voice low. We needed you. The words cut deeper than Victor's threats. I'd spent my life trying to make them proud, to hold our family together. Now, I was the one tearing it apart. Jude's hand brushed mine, a silent reminder of why I'd run. But the weight of my family's future pressed down, suffocating. Let me see the contract, Jude said, surprising everyone. The lawyers hesitated, but he grabbed the document, scanning it with an intensity one hadn't seen since our college debates. This is intimidation, he said, tossing it back. You're banking on fear, not law. Elias isn't propertize a person. The younger lawyer smirked. Sentiment doesn't hold up in court. Mr. Navarro. The Carters owe Mr. Langston millions. Without his support, they're finished. Jude's jaw clenched, but he didn't back down. Then we'll fight it. Elias isn't going back to that cage. The room fell silent. the air thick with tension. I looked at my family mom's fragility, Dad's defeat, Lila's quiet strength, and felt torn in two. "Give us a minute," I said to the lawyers, my voice steadier than I felt. They nodded, stepping outside, their confidence unshaken. Alone with my family and Jude, I let out a shaky breath. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice cracking. "I didn't mean to hurt you. But I can't live a lie. Not even for you." Mom's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded, reaching for my hand. "We just want you to be happy, Elias," she whispered. "But we're scared." Lila stepped forward, her eyes fierce. "Then let's fight. Work harder, sweet, don't give up." Her words sparked something in me, a flicker of the defiance I'd felt running out of that ballroom. Jude grinned, his hand squeezing mine. "She's right. Victor's not invincible. We just need to be smarter." We spent the afternoon strategizing, combing through the contract for loopholes. Jude called a lawyer friend from his art collective, a scrappy woman named Tara who specialized in taking on corporate bullies. She arrived with a laptop and a smirk, diving into the legalese like it was a puzzle. By evening, she'd found a clause Victor's bailout was contingent on mutual agreement, which could be argued as void if I'd been coerced. It wasn't a slam dunk, but it was a start. As night fell, Jude and I stepped onto the brownstone stoop, the city humming around us. "You okay?" he asked, his voice soft. I nodded, though I wasn't sure. I don't know if I'm strong enough for this," I admitted. He tilted my chin up, his eyes steady. "You are. And I'm here." His kiss was brief but fierce, a promise we'd face this together. But as we walked back into the night, Victor's shadow loomed, and I knew this fight was far from over. Tara's office was a cluttered cave in Queens, walls plastered with protest posters and legal books stacked like modern art. She sat across from us, her laptop glowing as she outlined our plan. "Victor's contract is tight, but not airtight," she said, tapping her pen. "We argue coercion, emotional duress, family pressure. It's a long shot, but it could buy us time." Jude leaned forward, his energy restless. "Time for what? He's got more lawyers than we've got brain cells." Tara grinned, undaunted. "Time to dig. Guys like Victor always have skeletons. We find one. We leverage it." Her confidence was infectious, but I felt the clock ticking. Victor wasn't just a businessman who was a predator, and I'd humiliated him. He wouldn't stop until he'd won. Back at Jude's loft, we pored over everything we could find on Victor news articles, financial reports, even gossip blogs. He was untouchable on paper, a philanthropist, a visionary, a king of New York's elite. But Jude's instincts, honed by years of scrappy survival, caught something I'd misread: a small article about a failed development project in Brooklyn, tied to shady permits and a whistleblower who'd vanished. "This," Jude said, pointing at the screen, "is our leverage." We spent days chasing leads, Jude's art contacts proving surprisingly useful. A bartender friend knew a guy who'd worked on Victor's project, hinting at bribes and cut corners. It wasn't much, but it was a thread to pull. Meanwhile, my family was fraying. Mom's health was declining, stress making her weaker, and Dad was retreating into silence. Lila was the only one holding steady, sneaking me updates while dodging Victor's spies. He'd frozen our accounts, citing breach of trust, and the pressure was crushing. One night, Jude and I hit a wall, exhausted and frustrated. We sat on his fire escape, the city sprawling below, its lights both beautiful and cruel. What if we lose? I asked, my voice small. Jude's hand found mine, his fingers rough from paint. Then we lose together, he said. But we're not there yet. He kissed me, slow and deep. And for a moment, the world faded. Victor, the contract, the fear. It was just us, two kids from college who'd found each other again. But the next morning, reality crashed back. Tara called, her voice tense. Victor's escalating. He's filed a lawsuit against your family for the full bailout amount plus damages. And he's got a new angle. He's claiming you stole proprietary information. My heart sank. That's a lie, I said. But Tara's silence was grim. Doesn't matter. He's got the resources to make it stick. Jude cursed, pacing the loft. We need to hit back harder. That Brooklyn project, let's find that whistleblower. It was a desperate move, but we had no choice. We tracked down the whistleblower's last known address, a rundown apartment in Red Hook. The place was empty, but a neighbor, an old woman with sharp eyes, remembered him. Moved out fast, she said. Said someone was after him. Left a box of papers in the basement. We found the box, dusty and forgotten, filled with documents, permits, emails, proof of Victor's shady deals. It was a gold mine, but dangerous. If we used it, we'd be painting targets on our backs. Jude didn't hesitate. We take him down, he said, his voice fierce. For you. For your family. For every person he stepped on. I nodded, my resolve hardening. We brought the papers to Tara, who nearly kissed us. This is it, she said, scanning the pages. We've got him. She drafted a counterclaim, accusing Victor of fraud and coercion, using the documents as evidence. It was risky. Victor's reach was long, and he'd fight dirty. But for the first time, I felt like we had a chance. That night, Jude and I celebrated quietly, sharing a bottle of cheap wine on his couch. To us, he said, raising his glass, his eyes soft. I clinked mine against his, my heart full. But as we drank, my phone lit up with a new message from Victor. You think you can outsmart me? Enjoy your little rebellion. It won't last. The words were a cold fist around my heart, and I knew the fight was about to get uglier. Victor's message lingered like a storm cloud, but we pressed forward. Tara filed the counterclaim, and the media caught wind of it. Splashing headlines across New York, billionaire's broken engagement turns legal battle. Victor's pristine image cracked, and the city buzzed with speculation. Jude and I stayed low, hiding out in his loft. But the pressure was relentless. Reporters camped outside my parents' brownstone, and anonymous threats started appearing. Letters slipped under Jude's door, voicemails warning us to back off. One evening, as we sifted through more documents, Jude's phone rang. He answered, his face paling. It's the gallery, he said, hanging up. Someone trashed my exhibit last night. Paint everywhere. Canvases slashed. His voice was steady, but his hands shook. I knew what this meant. His art was his soul. and Victor was hitting where it hurt. "We can't let him scare us," I said, though fear gnawed at me too. Jude nodded, but his eyes were distant, the weight of our fight sinking in. We doubled down, working with Tara to build our case. The whistleblower's documents were damning proof of Victor's bribes to city officials, forged permits, even a cover-up of a worker's injury. If we could get this to court, we might win. But Victor was a step ahead. Always. One night, Lila called. Her voice hushed. "Elias, someone's been following me. A guy in a black car. Outside my school." My blood ran cold. Victor was targeting my family now, tightening the noose. I told her to stay with friends, to avoid being alone. "I'm scared," she admitted. And hearing my fierce little sister sound so small broke something in me. Jude and I decided to confront Victor directly. It was reckless, but we were out of options. We arranged a meeting at a neutral Spoda quiet cafe in Midtown. Victor arrived alone, his suit pristine, his smile ablaze. "You've caused quite a mess, Elias," he said, stirring his espresso. "But I'm willing to negotiate. Drop your little lawsuit, and I'll leave your family alone." "And if I don't?" I asked, my voice steady despite the fear clawing my chest. His eyes narrowed, cold and unyielding. "Then I destroy you. All of you." Jude's hand tensed on the table, but he stayed silent, letting me take the lead. I leaned forward, meeting Victor's gaze. "We've got evidence. Victor, you're not untouchable. Push us, and we'll bury you." He laughed, a low, chilling sound. "You're playing a dangerous game, Elias. You have no idea what I'm capable of." He stood, tossing a bill on the table, and left without another word. The air felt heavier, like the calm before a hurricane. Back at the loft, Jude and I argued for the first time since the wedding. "We should go public," he said, pacing. "Leak the documents to the press. Let the world see who he is." I shook my head, my stomach churning. "That'll escalate things. He'll come for my family harder." Jude stopped, his eyes flashing. "And if we do nothing, he wins anyway. When are you going to stop being afraid?" His words stung, but they were true. I'd spent my life playing it safe, and it had led me to Victor's altar. I grabbed his hand, pulling him close. "I'm not afraid of him," I said. "I'm afraid of losing you." His expression softened, and he kissed me, fierce and desperate, like we were running out of time. The next day, Tara got a break. A judge agreed to hear our case sooner than expected, thanks to the media pressure. But Victor retaliated, leaking a story accusing me of stealing trade secrets, painting me as a greedy opportunist. The headlines hurt, but worse was the toll on my family. Mom stopped eating, her health spiraling, and Dad started drinking again, a habit he'd kicked years ago. Jude and I kept fighting, gathering more evidence, rallying allies. His art friends spread the word, turning Victor's scandal into a cause. Protesters showed up outside Langston Tower, chanting for justice. It was exhilarating, but terrifying. Every step forward felt like a step closer to the edge. And then, one night, as we left Tara's office, a car screeched to a stop beside us. Two men jumped out, their faces masked, and before I could react, They grabbed Jude. The men shoved Jude into the car, tires squealing as they sped off. I screamed his name, my voice swallowed by the city's roar. My legs moved before my brain caught up, chasing the car until it vanished into traffic. Panic clawed my chest, my breath ragged. This was Victor's warning made real. I called Tara, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. They took Jude. I gasped. We need help. Now. Tara was calm, her voice a lifeline. Go to the police. Elias. I'll meet you there. I flagged a cab, my mind racing. The precinct was a blur of fluorescent lights and paperwork. The officers skeptical until Tara arrived, her presence commanding. We filed a report, but the cops warned us Victor's influence ran deep. And without hard evidence, they could do little. Back at the loft, I was a wreck, pacing past Jude's canvases, their colors now mocking me with their vibrancy. His jacket hung on a chair, still damp from the night we'd run from the wedding. I grabbed it, holding it close, the leather scent grounding me. I couldn't lose him, not now. Not after everything. My phone buzzed a block number. I answered, heart pounding. Elias. Victor's voice purred, smooth as poison. You've been difficult, but I'm reasonable. Drop the lawsuit, and your friend is returned unharmed. My blood boiled, but fear kept me silent. Where is he? I demanded. Victor chuckled. Safe. For now. You have until tomorrow night. The line went dead. I called Tara, and we worked through the night, piecing together a plan. The documents were our only leverage, but leaking them now could endanger Jude further. Instead, we decided to bluff make Victor think we'd gone public without actually doing it. Tara drafted a press release, hinting at explosive evidence, and sent it to a trusted journalist friend with instructions to hold off publishing. We needed Victor to panic, to make a mistake. By morning, the bluff worked. Victor called, his composure fraying. You're making a mistake. Elias. He snapped. Call off your dogs, or Jude pays the price. I kept my voice steady, channeling Jude's defiance. Release him, Victor, or the world sees your dirty secrets by noon. It was a gamble, but I heard the hesitation in his silence. Hours later, a car pulled up outside the loft. Jude stumbled out, bruised but alive, his lip cut and his eyes blazing. I ran to him, pulling him into my arms, my relief so intense it hurt. I'm okay, he murmured, but his voice shook. He told me they'd held him in a warehouse, blindfolded, with Victor's men taunting him about my surrender. I knew you wouldn't give in, he said, his smile weak but real. We didn't have time to celebrate. Tara's journalist friend reported that Victor was scrambling, his legal team in disarray. The press release had spooked him, and rumors of his shady deals were spreading. We pushed forward, filing more evidence with the court, while Jude's art collective amplified the story online, turning public opinion against Victor. But Victor wasn't done. That night, he sent a new message. You've won this round, Elias. But I always collect my debts. The threat hung over us, but Jude's hand in mine was a reminder of what we were fighting for. We moved to a safe house Tara arranged, a small apartment in Harlem, and kept working. My family rallied, Lila organized a fundraiser for mom's treatments, and Dad started reaching out to old contacts, rebuilding our network. As the court date loomed, I felt a shift. The city, once Victor's domain, was turning against him. Protesters grew louder, and whistleblowers came forward, emboldened by our fight. Jude and I spent nights planning, but also dreaming of a life where we could be together, free from fear. "When this is over," he said one night, his head on my chest, "I'm painting you again." "Every day?" I laughed, my heart lighter than it had been in months. But deep down, I knew Victor's final move was coming, and we had to be ready. The courtroom was a battlefield, its polished wood and hushed whispers masking the war we'd fought to get here. Jude sat beside me, his hand brushing mine under the table, a quiet anchor in the storm. Across the room, Victor sat with his army of lawyers, his face a mask of calm. But I saw the cracks in his tight jaw, the way his fingers tapped his pen. The judge, a stern woman with gray hair, called the session to order, and Tara stood, her voice steady as she presented our case. She laid out Victor's fraud, the bribes, the coercion, each piece of evidence a brick in the wall we'd built. The whistleblower's documents were our cornerstone, corroborated by new testimonies from former employees who'd found courage in the growing scandal. Victor's team countered, painting me as a spoiled heir who'd betrayed a generous benefactor. But the tide was turning. Jurors leaned forward, their faces skeptical of Victor's polished lies. Outside, the city pulsed with our story. Protesters chanted, holding signs with Jude's art, his bold colors a symbol of resistance. Social media buzzed, justice for Elias trending as strangers shared their own stories of corporate greed. My family sat in the gallery mom, stronger now with new treatment funding from Lila's fundraiser. Dad, his pride restored. Lila, my fiercest ally, her eyes shining with hope. The trial stretched over days, each one a grueling test. Victor's team played dirty, digging up old college photos of Jude and me, twisting our rivalry into something sordid. But Tara was relentless, turning their attacks into proof of Victor's desperation. Jude took the stand, his voice raw as he described the kidnapping, the threats, the warehouse's cold concrete. I gripped the table, my heart aching for what he'd endured for me. On the final day, I testified. Standing before the court, I told the truth about the pressure to marry Victor, the fear for my family, the moment Jude crashed the wedding and saved me from myself. I chose love, I said, my voice steady, and I'd choose it again. Jude's eyes met mine from the gallery, and I saw pride there, and something deeper, unshakable faith. The verdict came swiftly. The judge ruled in our favor, declaring Victor's contract invalid due to coercion and ordering him to pay damages for fraud. The courtroom erupted, cheers drowning out Victor's lawyer's objections. He stood, his face pale, and for the first time, I saw him as small a man undone by his own greed. Outside, the press swarmed, but Jude and I slipped away, finding refuge in Central Park. We sat on a bench, the autumn leaves falling around us, their colors echoing his paintings. We did it, I said, my voice thick with relief. He smiled, his hand warm in mine. No, you did it. I just gave you a push. We laughed, the sound light and free. But the weight of Victor's final threat lingered. He'd vanished after the trial, his empire crumbling. But men like him didn't fade quietly. Still, I wasn't afraid anymore. I had Jude, my family, a future we'd fought for. Lila's fundraiser had grown, ensuring Mom's care. And Dad was rebuilding the Carter name, this time on our terms. That night, back in Jude's loft, we celebrated with cheap wine and takeout, surrounded by his art. He showed me a new canvas portrait of us, our faces lit by city lights, our hands entwined. "This is our story," he said, his voice soft. I kissed him, slow and sure, feeling the pieces of my life finally fit. Months later, we opened a gallery together, showcasing Jude's work and new artists from the city's margins. It was small, scrappy, ours. My family visited often, Mom's health improving, Lila dreaming of college, Dad proud in a way I'd never seen. Victor's shadow faded, his threats empty without his power. We'd won not just the trial, but a life where love was the loudest voice. As I stood in the gallery, watching Jude laugh with a buyer, I thought of the wedding I'd fled, the vows I'd never met. I'd agreed to marry a cold businessman for my family. But Jude had crashed more than a ceremony, had crashed my walls, my fears, my doubts. And in their ruins, we'd built something beautiful, something true.